quite rare that you have a company that would actually, have C, C++, GTK, Qt, all these GNOME technologies, but also work on Qt, on KDE, no problems. They are not, usually you have companies that like C, and that can't stand C++, or who like GNOME and can't stand KDE, or, this was one of the rare things we had, that we would work across these communities and bring them together. But this is no longer true. I left that company. The plan is to join the other side. So, yes, KDAV is a company that has been paying for these trips, right, to Seoul, and in the last week of May, and now also to Tokyo, because there have been 2 conferences about Linux. And since then, I've been traveling. so I've been in Tokyo and Kyoto, Hiroshima. Yesterday I was in Yokohama. And so just today I arrived here. Without checking into my hotel, I got lost at Shinjuku Station. So I had to try to come here. So yeah. So I'm working for these guys. But I'm only going to start later this year. Right now I'm on vacation. Right. So the project I've been working on for Nokia is this input method framework called Maliit. I'm going to show you the links to the wiki page and all that later. It's the different thing about Maliit is that it was intended as an input method for mobile and embedded, which is very different from what you have on your desktop systems, whereas you type something and then you have the word candidate and you insert that and you just use it for writing, right? If you have a touch display, then you have additional things that you want to do. You want to manipulate the text. You need to select the text. You want to go back, fix some mistakes, or you want to copy and paste, or you want to do some formatting. And all you have is your finger on a touch screen. You have no right mouse button, or you can't even select and then move over the screen. All these things don't exist. You only have your finger. Maybe you can use 2 on multi-touch display. But it's very inaccurate and it's very cumbersome actually to edit text if you try that. So mobile text input takes input methods. That's just a basic step. You need that. Then you have text manipulation. And this extends the whole experience to what we defined as mobile text input. But what we found out, working on this and talking to people, is that mobile text input works just as well on embedded, because over the last years we've seen this trend that embedded has been moving to touch displays. Right? So hardware keyboards break, and hardware keyboards are expensive. And for embedded systems, it's cheaper and easier to maintain, and more endurable to actually have only touch screens without any moving parts. Right? That's the advantage of touch displays and embedded. And suddenly we have mobile devices and embedded devices that actually have the same primary input, and that is a touch screen. And that's why what started on a Nokia 9 on a handset and was planned to work on tablets can also be used on embedded systems. And embedded systems, where this actually becomes very interesting is the automotive industry, which was exactly the automotive Linux summit. I was in Tokyo last week of May. The problem there is you have this HMI, this human machine interface, which is basically a navigation system what you have in the center of your console in your car, right? And it's a touch display. and you want to enter an address, or you want to find a contact, you want to do anything. What these guys don't realize, the automotive industry, really, the companies from Germany or company, from the US, that they need input methods on these on these HMI systems. So here, for companies from East Asia, it's obvious. Right? When we talk to companies here, they all say, of course. But if you talk to big automotive companies in the US or even in Europe, they all think that they can sell cars in China or in Korea or in Japan without having input methods. Or if they start to think about input methods, it's usually too late, like very late at the product development stage, and they've already done all the other software. And then they think about input methods. Then they realize, oh, it's input method, but input methods are for the desktop. They actually need something more because it's a touch display. There's no hardware keyboard. And they already have done all the other software. And then how do you integrate that? Because what we see here, mobile text input, if we take the second task, text manipulation, you actually need to do that on the toolkit level. You need to do that on each application. Right? So what happens is you either get a very, very poor input method experience or none at all. It's just, if you do it at the end of the product development, it's just not going to work. I'm not sure whether you know that, but when we started the 9 work, Hamilton, the text input team was one of the earliest teams, right? So we had to start from the beginning. Before the core application had been written, we would already start with the input method framework. So just so that we could take the requirements into account. Whenever there was a problem in the core application development, we could fix it. So we did it in parallel. That is the only way how you can achieve a good integration. That's why I want to highlight. But that's what most of the industries right now that want to make use of that don't realize that they need to do it in the beginning. So yeah, just a more formal example of text selection and formatting. This is what you would have on the desktop, right? You can click here, then you can move your mouse pointer until here. You would select the whole text. You can right click, and then you get a context menu. It's just stylized, but that's how it works on the desktop. And maybe you have a toolbar with 3 buttons for formatting the selected text as well. On mobile, you want to, but you don't have the right click, the context menu, and you want to save as much screen space as possible. And also there's a problem if you have a virtual keyboard that eats up a lot of your space. So there are 2 ways that we found out that work. You can have a toolbar, which is quite common, what you see these days on an Android. But then, mostly more than half the screen that's gone. And then you can have these actions as soon as you select text. This toolbar with the context menu will appear. So it's different from this one. This only appears if you right click. This appears automatically as soon as you select text. And then but then you waste space. And the next annoying thing here is you just select the text with your finger here. And then you have to go to a different place to select the action. So this is actually what works better if you have automatically showing context menu, which is close to the last interaction, close where you selected the text. This is what works much better for users. The difference here is this is something you can implement in the input method. The toolbar could be part of your virtual keyboard window. So it's maybe in a separate process. This is what you would implement completely in a completely different place than where you would implement this. If you want to implement this, it's probably part of your toolkit, part of the application. It's important to consider. So you have these use cases, you need to think what you want, then you still need to find the right place for the integration. Another example is proxy versus direct text input. Again, you come from the desktop, no problem at all. We have our hardware keyboard, and we type correctly, and we see the results immediately in the application. This is just how it works. This is basically how the iPhone works, our older versions of iOS. You have a proxy text input with an OK button that then, when you press that, submit it to the application. Again, this can be made part of your input method together with the virtual keyboard, which is why it is simple. So any application will work with that. You don't have to integrate anything with the application at all. But again, you have a lot of space that's going to be eaten up, and suddenly you type text here, and you don't have the same experience as on the desktop. As a result, is immediately visible. You always have this two-phase: type in the proxy edit, commit, and then it's inserted. This is actually confusing for people in the Western world, because they are not used to that. For you, using input methods, this is actually as if you were using an input method. It's very similar. So maybe it's not confusing to you, but for people who naturally wouldn't use input methods, this can be strange at first. So the other way is you try to copy the same idea, you input the text directly, but then you need to have the integration in the toolkit again, so that you can make it work, that you can immediately insert the pre-edit, and that you auto-commit whenever you hit space or return, whatever. So a brief history about Maliit, the project. Started somewhere in 2009, 2008 actually. Then in February 2010, we made the code available to the public with the open source license. But it wasn't a real open source project, like it was just a code drop on tutorials. You could see the code, but the documentation was poor. It would only compile if you had Scratchbox and all these other libraries dependencies. So people struggled to build it on the desktop, or even to just try it out. So this only changed much later than with this release. It became easier with Maliit 0.80 in June 2011. You could start to build on your desktop more easily. I guess everyone knows what happened in February 2011. This is when our project got cancelled. Right. So we had to move somewhere else. We had to think about something, and we thought, well, this might be useful in the future, this project. So we set up our own dedicated infrastructure, which means we have Maliit.org, which is our own bug, with our own bug tracker, our own wiki, and we are independent, right, in that sense. So this is mostly the last year. And a lot of things happened, even though the development, if you look at the code, slowed down. So this is because I've been traveling, trying to convince other projects to look into this, because we really need a more active community. We have several companies using Maliit. We actually have even several consultancies using that in medical devices, or trying to use it in IVI systems. And you don't see all of that work in public, because they take Maliit and try to integrate it into products that are still in development, so no one of us knows about them. But there are these public projects that we can talk about, where we see it. So we have Plasma Active, the KDE project, that is using Maliit. We have one laptop per child, which is also using Maliit, which is kind of strange, because Sugar OS is a GNOME-based desktop with GTK and not Qt. But they had no problem whatsoever to take a working solution, even if it was using Qt, and to put it on top. It was just fine for them. The architecture made sense. They liked it, and they took it in. Then we got someone to create recipes for Maliit, so that you can use it with Open Embedded. So you can create your binary, an image, a Linux image, and this already has Maliit integrated. And if you put it on your device, if you get it to work, Maliit will work out of the box. Very interesting for embedded companies. It would need more people to test that, because it's quite some effort to make sure, or to document actually on which hardware does it work, or in how to use these recipes. It really just is a first step to make it easier to get it compiled, right? the integration work you still have to do. Yeah, so this is something I'm very proud of. A Valent input method. Who of you knows about Valent? Valent? Okay. Valent is supposed to be a new display server for Linux, replacing X11 and Xorg. Valent does not primarily target the desktop. It targets mobile and embedded. And this fits very well for Mali. What Valent didn't have was any kind of input method infrastructure. With X11 we at least have XAM. Who of you has worked with XAM? I refrain from admitting it. Has anyone of you used XAM to write input methods? XAM, okay. Not very popular either here, but XAM is quite old and it's quite a lot of things you have to do, so it's not really fun. But it has some good ideas in it. And the basic idea is here with Valent input methods, we can design a protocol that will be shipped with this display server, and we can make writing input methods very easy, and we can split it in half, the protocol. So we take one half that is for input method developers, and we take the other half that is for toolkits, for UI toolkits. And we do the UI toolkit integration as good as possible, and then input method developers don't have to think about that. They only write their input method, and the integration with the toolkits will just work. Integration with a compositor, with a display server, will just work because we already did this work. And we only have to do it once. We have to do it once for the display server, or for each compositor that you write. And we have to do it once per toolkit, per UI toolkit. And then any input method, it doesn't matter what toolkit you use, whether you render directly to the buffer, whether you use OpenGL, whatever. You can make use of that integration work already. You don't have to do it yourself. So this is a huge step forward, and we hope that this is going to simplify input method development on Linux. Because the biggest problem that we see on Linux is actually that we don't have good input methods. If you check macOS or if you check Windows, input methods there work much better than what we have on Linux. And on GNOME we have IBUS, right? Most of you will probably know that IBUS is quite slow for Japanese, for instance, but actually also for Chinese. For Chinese it's even worse. So it's not, I guess, none of you really likes IBUS. The problem is we don't have many open source contributors who know about input method and who have an interest in Linux or an interest in GNOME or whatever. And it's also a topic that's quite complicated to get into. You need a lot of expertise to get started. You need to know what you're doing. You probably need to speak these languages as well. You know, so the selection becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And then suddenly you realize that there might be only 3 or 5 people in the world who do that in the open. That's not much. That's not good. That's not enough to have a community. So the whole idea about this Valent input methods work that we started last year was to simplify this and to have something for this new display server technology that is going to be used in cars, in IVI. Intel is pushing that technology very heavily. You're going to see it on the desktop. GNOME is adapting it. KDE already works with Valent. And then, who knows? But at this point it is clear that it's going to replace X11. Yeah. So we have Yola, there's ex-Nokians who use Maliit and Sailfish OS. Also very nice, right? So we actually have 2 to 3, but actually 4 guys from Yola that have contributed patches to Maliit. Right. So that's quite nice. Yeah, and then we have Canonical. Canonical actually used Maliit at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona earlier this year, in February, to show that they have some kind of virtual keyboard, and that was actually Maliit. And then we see, once they showed it to the public, and they were able to contribute these patches back, quite nice. if you look at current master, it's a bit broken because I didn't have time to fix everything. Right now, it's really in development stage. I'm quite happy. Yeah. So we made a release, .99. The idea is that we want to have a stable release this year, Maliit 1.0. Stable in the sense that we give plugin developers, input method developers, stable API to develop plugins against. And I mean, in the long term, if we maybe go over here, and if this work starts out to be really good, if the way the input method works is becoming the standard, and people contribute to that, then over here, we're not going to need Maliit anymore. Because we can use the same idea that we had in Maliit right there. We can create a good architecture from the beginning, and we don't need a framework to add this abstraction. We can put it directly into Wayland. And if Wayland becomes a standard on Linux, then actually in the long term we no longer need Maliit. But having Maliit is still interesting because Maliit already runs this Wayland input methods. So if you write a plugin for Maliit, then it will work for X11 and it will work for Wayland. So it's useful as a migration path. It's something that works today, and it will even work in the future. Maybe a bit more about the architecture. We have an input method framework and plugins. Input method framework means that it tries to integrate with the application, with UI toolkits. It's applications talk to an input method server through an IPC, and this input method server then loads these input method plugins, and it can even switch between the plugins dynamically. If you have Japanese, then there is a different plugin maybe. If you have handwriting recognition, that would be a different plugin. You could even have a voice recognition as an input method plugin for Maliit. What we want to achieve is to have a complete reference solution. Complete, yes, but reference, meaning it might not be 100% polished, or it might not be what you want specifically for your embedded product. If you think about smart TVs, then an input method will work differently there than what you have on your phone or on IVI. Simply different use cases. And it doesn't make sense to have one solution, one input method that would work across everything. But what we want to give, and the very permissive BSD licenses, what we want to provide is reference solutions that these companies can take. They can do whatever they want with the code, and hopefully build their own solutions on top. Because again, we want to simplify. We want to make sure that they don't have to write everything from scratch and have to figure out everything. Give them something that's already working, and then allow them to add proprietary code on top, and keep it to themselves. I'm not interested in that. They don't need to contribute that back to the Maliit project. They have specific use cases, they have specific devices. It's probably not going to be of use for others. So why should they contribute it back? Yeah, it's not an application toolkit. It's not meant for application developers. Application developers shouldn't care about input methods. They write the applications, and if it works perfectly well, they would never have to think about input methods. They just use the provided components, the provided widgets, and it will all just work, right? So this is what we already have today on the desktop, and it doesn't make sense to change that for mobile or embedded. So this is why I'm actually against virtual keyboards or input methods that are embedded into the application. Because suddenly, if it's in one process, or if it's a library, then suddenly the application developer becomes responsible for dealing with a library. You might have to invoke the keyboard manually, might have to dismiss it manually. In the long term, this doesn't create a very good experience. Because if you have application developers, different applications are going to do it differently. It's going to become very inconsistent across applications. Yeah. The last point, which we tried to do in marketing, but I wasn't very successful, is to make it a point for collaboration. So have Maliit as an umbrella term for modern input methods and have people come to us and contribute and discuss. To be honest, that never really worked out because it's too abstract. What worked out was to have Maliit as a product. Maliit is this virtual keyboard that I can use, and it's going to have full CJK support. But we don't have Chinese support in the open. We have proprietary plugins for that, for the online. We have Japanese plugins. We have a Korean plugin, and they're actually open source. Yeah. So having a product actually made more sense than having this goal of having a community of input method developers that would work together on common goals, even if they might work on different projects. That part never really worked, I have to admit. So the collaboration, what we have, as I said, maliit.org is our website, and there's a directory for releases where you just find the tarballs. It's also documented on the wiki what these versions mean and how it belongs together. And you always will find one tarball for the framework and one tarball for the reference plugins, and you can usually build that together and use that together. Yeah, we actually have official packages for Debian and Fedora now. The Fedora packages are provided by OLPC as part of their work. The Debian packages, they're made, that was actually Canonical investing work in it. And they are the ones maintaining it. Then you have these open embedded recipes. Plasma Active has their own Maliit repository. And for automated testing, we had infrastructure at some point, but that's now missing. So I need to figure out how to set it up again. Just use something like Jenkins or Buildpod, at least to have basic tests when it compiles or when someone breaks it, run the tests, something like that. Yeah, we still use qt-users.jp for the code and for reviews. I'm not sure whether this is the best website these days. It seems that all the developers are using GitHub, and very few developers are using qt-users. So for more visibility, you might want to move Maliit to something more popular, or at least have a mirror on GitHub, so that to make it easier for developers to find us. Because in qt-users, the search is slow, it doesn't work, and yeah, it's not good for the project actually, for us. Yeah, the wiki I mentioned several times. Documentation. So this is something where I really would like to have new contributors helping out. Reading the source code, trying to understand it, fixing the documentation where it's wrong or outdated. Because I know it's very, very outdated at this point. And we have, of course, mailing lists. And we have a nice YouTube channel. I should maybe show that channel. No, that's not. Yeah. The last talk, I added this one 2 weeks ago because I didn't have any other account, so ignore that one. It's about the LNA. It doesn't have nothing to do with Mali. And I'm going to move that, promise. Once I have more time, I'm going to move that video. But here we see Mali videos, how it actually works. Yeah, we have some features like remote text input. You have one device sitting here, your tablet maybe. You can use that to input text and it will appear on a different device. So this is because we use dbus, and if you have a trusted network, you can actually do that. Yeah, you can see that. You type some text on the tablet, and it appears on a different device, actually. You can immediately think that this might be useful, and that's Smart TV. Where you have your couch device, smartphone or tablet, and there you have your input method, a virtual keyboard, and you control the TV with that. We already see these applications with Android. It already exists. But we can do the same with marketing, and we can do it fully in the open. If you want to learn more about Maliit, then going to that channel is the best way. And now, well, it doesn't really go full screen anymore. I don't know. So we have what's going on is currently Maliit is targeting Qt 5, and for the plugins we promote Qt Quick 2. We no longer use qwidget. This is quite obvious because in Qt 5, if you use Qt Quick 2, you get compared to Qt Quick 1 and even compared to qwidget, you get quite a nice performance improvement. Valid input methods, as I said, yeah, we already support enlightenment foundation libraries, which is another UI toolkit, not very popular, maybe, but very performant and has been in development for a long time. Quite stable actually, very efficient. So for embedded, it's quite attractive actually. Samsung is using that in Tizen and Butter. And then for Qt and GTK, we have some experimental work. Like I mentioned before, valid input method has or shares the same architecture, the same principles as Maliit. This is why I always consider it part of our Maliit work. We took our experience and used it right there. Yeah, reducing dependencies. What we did is we split out our input context that we had for GTK and Qt4. We split out in different repositories because the main repository what we get only targets Qt 5. And it only builds for Qt 5 because we realized that this is what most people are interested in. Like 70 or 80% of the guys asking on the mailing list only want to have it for Qt 5 at this point. So why make them build the GTK stuff or even the Qt4 stuff? Doesn't make sense. Only makes it too complex. So we moved that to different repositories, and if you want that, you can still have it, but you need to build from different repositories. Yeah, we still want to simplify the input method plugins. How you can look at the API, how you can write them, maybe with some help libraries. It's planned. I didn't have time to start that, and also break the API. So it's something I have to do before Maliit 1.0, or just forget about it. Then adopting the framework for new platforms. Yes, we've been discussing with Qnix to make Maliit available there. So at least on some experiments, you could already see it. The integration isn't very good right now at this point. It's really just a prototype. It doesn't make sense. But maybe we can make Maliit available in Qnix. Then there's also planned the same what we did with the valid input methods. We want to discuss the web standards of the W3C that the W3C has about input methods. And we want to again make them so that we have a common architecture that they reflect on the other way around. We want to bring our experience to these open standards so that this API that you have for web developers, for input methods, for input method editors, will look very similar to how we did the Maliit plugin, how we write Maliit plugins, and will again look very similar to the Valent architecture. So there we have it. We have a system compositor or display server with input method API. We have Maliit with its own architecture, and at some point we're going to have web standards, and they're all going to share the same ideas and similar architectures. So if you know one, you already know how to work with the others. And it's going to be even better if this works out. A web developer targeting HTML5 or JavaScript could use our input methods if the system is running on Valent, for instance. Valent can load Maliit plugins. It can run Maliit, right? So if you have a system input method that is Maliit together with Valent here, and then you have your web runtime on top, you would actually use Maliit in your web browser, or could control that, or could even write plugins using web technologies for Maliit, or however it's going to look in the future. But for me, it's important to have to influence all of these ongoing developments, to converge APIs and ideas, to make them more similar, right? Not to have everyone going in different directions. So this is what I'm currently working on. Yeah. That's about Maliit. I haven't shown code because the code looks boring. It's C++, Qt, and for the UI stuff, we use QML. I mean, that's nothing new to you. That's just, I mean, it's boring. So the other thing that I wanted to mention are the Qt Dev Days. It's going to be in October this year in Berlin, and then November in San Francisco. If you haven't considered that to go there, and you're using Qt professionally, or you want to use Qt professionally, I would urge you to reserve the dates and to think about coming to the Qt Dev Days. I know traveling is expensive. I know that myself. So the best way to get an invite is to submit a talk. This is not open yet. Deadlines for call for papers are not clear yet. The paper committee is not clear yet. It's not decided yet. But it will happen soon, right? And you should already start thinking about talks, things that you could present, maybe with a unique perspective. Maybe topics that we in the Western world tend to ignore. So, you know, like, okay, I have this classical example is input methods, like, always gets ignored, right? But you might have other ideas as well, which you could present. And I'm telling you this because I think, or I know that if the paper committee sees contributions from Japan for Qt, they will actually, you know, there will be a very special, you will be given special attention. Well, once were Dev Days in Japan, right? There once were Dev Days in Japan even.
Yes.
But right now it doesn't happen. So the problem is that the Qt community in Japan is very, it's quite invisible to the rest of us, and it's quite disconnected. Very few of you probably have been invited to the Qt Contributor Summit. Right? There's a Contributor Summit in 5 weeks from now. Yeah, it's 1 month basically. In Spain. And did you get an invite?
Huh?
Did you get an invite for it? No. Yeah. So no one of you is going there, probably, to the Contributor Summit. I'm probably not going either. But what I'm trying to explain is, if you, as contributors to Qt, don't go there, then none of the other developers is going to know you. And this makes collaboration so incredibly hard. If you haven't met the other developers, the other contributors, if you don't, you know, if you can't talk to them directly, then whenever you want to contribute something or whenever you propose an idea, you always have to, the first question that's going to happen, who is that guy? I don't know him. Why should I look at this code? And to overcome this barrier, this initial barrier, it really helps to know the community, to get yourself introduced. Right? One way would be to come to these community events. But the other one that might maybe more realistic is also to come to these Dev Days. And you can choose California or Germany. I would tell you to come to Germany because it's going to be more technical. This is how it has been in the past. We also have Café Moscow and Umspannwerk Alexanderplatz are going to be very, very interesting locations. So we actually expect 700 to 1,000 attendees. It's going to be a big conference for Qt conference. It's going to be, I don't think we ever had 1,000 attendees for the Qt Dev Days. I'm not sure, but
I think China.
China maybe, yeah. Okay, yeah, that could be, but not the ones in Germany. The update is quite professional. So if you don't submit a talk, they're not only going, you're going to have to pay for the trip to Europe, you're also going to have to pay for the ticket, which is going to be around 600 euros, probably, or 700 euros. And as a speaker, you get a free ticket. And you probably get travel sponsorship. The only other way to get a free trip to Europe, in that sense, to that conference, would probably if your company sponsors you. But then you're already using it professionally, right? Then you have different opportunities. So yeah, that's why I think it's important that you keep an eye on this website and on the announcements. It's going to be on the Qt Labs blog, I think, on the website there as well. But as soon as a call for paper opens, you should consider submitting talks. As I said, you're going to meet others. You can introduce yourself to the community. And if your company isn't using Qt yet, then there's an ideal, there's a great opportunity to learn more about Qt and to come back with ideas, to convince your own management, your own company to use Qt for future product development. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Any questions?
もっとなんか詳しく聞きたいこととか。
I have to thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.